meeting for this Wednesday, September 6, 2017. At this time on our agenda, we invite folks to make a public comment if anyone is here to do so. Doesn't appear there is, so I'll move on to the next matter that we have to take up, and that would be, are there any members of the DRB here this evening who perceive that they have a conflict of interest with respect to anything on our agenda?
Yes. The Brandon application.
And that would be
CU 1711. Yeah.
Okay. That being the case, and seeing as how it's the second matter on our agenda, would anyone care to make a motion to, well, first of all, any other conflicts? None. So member Jeff Hodgson's going to recuse himself from application CU 1711. And given that it is second to last on our agenda, do you want to make a motion to amend the agenda?
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda and switch number 8 with number 7.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. So we're going to move the agenda a little bit. Given that, I think it'll be perfect because there's only a 5-minute differential, so I don't think it'll be a problem with anybody. So this evening, what we need to do is approve the minutes of, I believe, both the August 2nd and August 19, July 19 minutes. Let's take up the July 19 minutes first. Did everyone have an opportunity who was present at that meeting and is present here this evening to review those minutes? Okay. I will take a motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. And I was not at the August 2nd hearing and have not watched it on the VCAM, so.
Me neither.
Uh-oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I think Norm was, right? All right, so Mark, you were not,
Only 2 of us were.
so we'll have to postpone, I think, because we won't get a majority. So we'll postpone approval of the August 2nd meeting minutes until our next meeting, which would be on the 20th. Okay. Before we get started with any substantive matters this evening, I'd like to request anyone who believes that they might give testimony or participate in any matters on our agenda this evening, if they haven't already done so, please sign in with Mary Ann and provide your contact information, and so that we have a clear record of who's here this evening. We have a decent-sized crowd, so I want to make sure everybody understands that it's necessary they do that. Okay, the first matter on our agenda, the first substantive matter on our agenda is design review application DR 17-12. It's an application by Neil Berger for the modification of an existing barn. The modifications include the additions of windows to the south and north sides of the structure, replacement of existing shingles, placement of a new pump on the north side of the barn, and the addition of a stabilizing beam along the roof peak. The property is located at 959 Falls Road in the Shelburne Falls Mixed-Use District, the Stormwater Overlay District, and the Village Design Review District. Is there anybody in the audience this evening who wishes to give testimony about this application, DR 17-12?
I'm Neil Berger.
Okay, Mr. Berger, if you would come up to the microphone. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Could you state your name, please?
Neil Berger.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing? I got a little confused, honestly, looking at some of the drawings. So I'd love to know what you're doing, and I'd also like to know how old this barn is. It looks rather old.
The house, people estimate on style grounds is like 1895. I'm not sure if the barn is as old as the house. The barn won't be altered in any way except for windows. And the windows visible from the street are transom windows, like nice, classy, up high, running basically the length of the side facing the street,
Is the
just
side-
under the roof.
Is the side facing the street the south side?
South side,
Okay,
yep.
got it.
And there'll be windows added on the north side too. There's kind of an existing window on the north side that will kind of be quadrupled basically. And there's a hayloft door that will be turned into a window on the west side. And the east side has a window that will be kept as is.
Will you be reciting the structure as well?
No,
Wow, okay. And the east side windows will stay?
the east side has a window that will stay, yeah, that's an existing window.
It looks like 4 windows down low
Um,
on the east side.
Oh, sorry, that's confusing. So that's a workshop. That's a workshop next to the barn.
Oh,
So this
okay.
is-
It's attached on.
There's a workshop and a garage that are later additions, and there's kind of the core of a barn here. That's
Got
the
it,
pricing.
got it, got it. That's, I guess, what confused me a little bit. Okay. Thank you. Do any members of the board have any questions of Mr. Berger? No one?
I do not.
Okay, that being the case, I'll make a motion to grant design review approval of DR 17-12 for the modification of an existing barn to include addition of windows on the south and north sides of the structure, replacement of existing shingles.
A new roof,
Okay,
same style.
okay. So replacement of existing shingle roof?
Yeah, on the barn. The barn is going to get new tar style shingles.
All right. Placement of a new heat pump on the north side of the barn and the addition of a stabilizing beam along the roof peak, with the conditions that a zoning permit be obtained prior to commencing any work, and that the plans submitted with the application include a notation on both the south and north elevations that the parapet roof will remain.
Yes.
Okay. May I have a second to the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Berger, for coming in.
So how do I obtain the piece of paper to display? Okay. Do I go see you tomorrow, Kate, or? Monday, okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Good luck with that. The next substantive application in front of us this evening is the final application SUB 93-03R4. It's a final plat amendment application by Greenleaf LLC for an amendment to an existing written condition of approval for SUB 93-03R1, which limits the habitable floor area of anything constructed on Lot 21 of the development to 3,500 square feet. The applicant is asking that the language to the permit be changed to allow for the construction of a 4,000 square foot home, 4,000 square foot habitable area, floor area. Property is located at what is currently designated 0 Dorset Street, and it's known as Lot 21 and located in the rural district. Is there anyone in the audience this evening present to give testimony in connection with this application? Okay. Ma'am, why don't you come to the microphone? We'll repeat the process. Can I have your name, please?
Kathy O'Brien.
Kathy, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that any evidence you give in connection with this cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and
do.
penalties of perjury?
I do.
All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your application and why you think an amendment meets the criteria for amending?
Right, and I
Permit.
just saw tonight that Dean had done an email, which we weren't privy to, so I'm not sure what that was in that. It's 24 lot subdivision. This is my husband, John. His uncle George was the one that did the subdivision. We bought the project with the permits from him. He's now deceased. He never wanted McMansions. He wanted more modest homes, so he was the one that suggested the 3,500 square foot. And for all the other 23 lots, it was no problem. We've been trying to sell lot 21 for the last 4.5 years, and cannot, because of the restrictions placed on it during the permitting. There's no views from where the building envelope is. The public driving by gets gorgeous views, but on this almost 32 acres, the landowner gets no views. That's fine, we can accept that, but we finally got someone to make an offer on the land contingent that it's 4,000 square feet of habitable. So, just looking at the staff notes, I think it meets criteria 2. That changes in the operation of the Permites project. You know, we're paying over $6,000 a year in taxes and cannot sell it. We're asking less now than what it's appraised at the town, nothing. We just need some relief because it's just not selling. It seems like on 32 acres, 4,000 square feet of a house is not excessive.
So the lot itself is 32 acres?
31.89.
I believe I saw also something in your application that talked about the size of homes in the area?
Yeah, I just looked on MLS and looked at things that were either active or had closed in the last year, and that list was all in nearby properties, just to show that it's compatible with properties nearby, that it's not in excess of other homes. And that's only looking at what's sold in the past year, not everything out there, by any means.
Anything to add, Kate?
No, so just to recap the staff report, basically went through all of the approvals. There were a few amendments to them. I went through all of them and I really couldn't find any place that expanded on this idea of it only being 3,500 square feet. Really does seem like it was a requirement to state what that area was going to be, and he put it down as 3,500 square feet. And then the Stowe Islands test, it's recommended that you take that into consideration. I think reasonably, number 2 listed, you know, is what Kathy is saying, should be taken in consideration. What I will say is that those dimensions just need to fit squarely within the building envelope, because everything else around it is conserved land, and there's a view cone and a bunch of other natural resources. So, but other than that, I don't have a problem with it.
So you're not proposing any changes to the building envelope as depicted
No, I
on the
knew that
plan?
would be controversial.
Do any members of the DRB have questions of Ms. O'Brien?
I guess my comment would be, I don't really see that it fits with any of those requirements, but on the other hand, I don't see why we shouldn't change it either, because it doesn't, you know, it doesn't seem like a significant difference, and for the reasons that the applicant is saying.
Norm?
Well, I could see why it was not reasonably foreseen that this would be an issue, so I think it fits within subsection B.
As do I. And Mark?
I agree with Norm.
Well, in that case, does anyone want to make me a motion?
I would make a motion to close the hearing, final plan amendment for this application, SUB 93-04R4, which modifies condition number 9 within the finding of fact for that decision, SUB 93-04R1 through R3. With the conditions that all previous conditions apply, and on the other recorded documents referencing the condition should be amended with the new language prior to the issuance of a zoning permit for lot number 21.
Okay, I'll second that motion for closing the hearing and approving the application. All in favor? Aye. Any-
Except, I don't think we specified the language that we were.
Well, the
approving,
language,
It's
There's an
already in,
example.
it's already in their existing
it's,
permit that, or approval in the subdivision permit.
we modify,
1,000.
yeah,
Yeah.
specifically to modify that,
Okay.
condition 9, from
Okay, I see.
3,500 to 4,000 square feet.
Okay. Just didn't
Got
see
it.
the language anywhere in the motion.
Okay, you're right.
You're
Yeah,
right.
Sorry about that.
I didn't see the sign-up sheet. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
Sorry about that. I thought you were referring to something else in the building envelope. Okay. If it gets too loud, folks, and you can't hear us, feel free to close the door. Sometimes happiness happens in the hallway. Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Next matter on our agenda, which was slated to begin at 7:25, we're, as usual, ahead of schedule, is application SUB 1701. It's a sketch plan application by Claude and Gal LaPierre for a two-lot subdivision on the property located on 6140 Route 116 in the rural district. It's in a portion of the floodplain and watercourse overlay districts. Is there anyone present this evening, pardon, in connection with this application? Okay, looks like there's 3 folks. Who wants to take the first whack at giving us a little background? Thank you. Your name, please, ma'am?
Gail LaPierre.
Ms. LaPierre, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in connection with this application under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Well, we're in the process of moving the farm to the next generation, and we're just kind of taking the working portion, the barn and house, and putting them in one lot and keeping the rest as open farmland right now.
That's
It's
it?
as simple as that, yeah.
Anything to add to that, Kate?
And
That never
the
happens
portion.
to us.
Well, yeah, and it's not, we're not developing, we're just dividing.
You're just creating a lot for yourselves and then farmland? That your son
No,
is-
our son and daughter-in-law will be moving into the farmhouse, and we have another piece of land that we'll be building on, a separate parcel. And then the watershed overlay isn't part of this subdivision, and I can't remember what the other thing, but they're not part of this lot that we've created.
Does anyone have any questions in connection with this application? You're not changing operations at all?
No.
Norm, Joanna, anything?
Thank you.
Pretty straightforward. In that case, I will move to classify the subdivision application SUB 1701 as a minor subdivision, and I'll move to authorize preparation of a final plan application for SUB 1701. And I don't think that there's, what you'll have to do is get comments from the various heads of the various departments, which Kate can tell you
Help
about.
us
So
with.
with that proviso, can I have a second to that joint motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Okay, so now we got to switch, and the next application, which was due up at 7:35, so I'm a little bit concerned since we're so far ahead of the game, but we'll see. This is CU, so it's a conditional use application, CU 14-13R1. It's an application by Joplin James with authorization from the Town of Shelburne for the construction of a suspension footbridge in the LaPlatte Nature Park. Is there anybody here in connection with that application? Yeah, oh, great. Could you come forward and give us your name, sir?
Hi, Joplin James.
You raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that any testimony that you should give in connection with this application shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I affirm that I speak honorably.
That's good enough for me. Okay, Mr. James, tell us about what you're doing. I gotta say, I did not try to follow the math.
Oh, really? You want me to explain it to you?
I gotta find, there we go. So, yeah, what's going on?
So, okay, I'm just trying to figure out how far back to go. I was just reading the notes from the DRB meeting from October of 2014, when we originally made the application, which was granted for a similar bridge with some conditions on it. But maybe I need to go back a little bit further. 5 years ago, I'm a teacher at the Shelburne Community School, and a group of children from our neighborhood wanted to walk to school, and we found a log that had fallen across the river, and we put up our little railing on it, and then proceeded for the rest of that school year to walk to school. And unfortunately, in the spring, the floods came and washed the log away. So that summer, another neighbor took it upon ourselves to build a bridge that was a little bit higher above the floodplain, which worked quite well, and proceeded to use it for the beginning of the school year, but it was pointed out when some adjoining landowners noticed it and questioned where it came from that we did not have permit to build it, and in fact hadn't communicated with the town about it. So the select board asked us to remove the bridge and apply for a permit, which we did, and it was, as I mentioned, it was granted with the stipulation that we have an engineer, so a licensed engineer, make a design that would meet safety concerns of such a bridge. So we now have that approved design that's been reviewed by Steve Vock, who's the consulting engineer for the town. And we would like to proceed with building
Construction?
the bridge. Yes.
And so this is a group of neighbors who are gonna build this bridge?
Yes. So we have a large number of people who have offered to help with it, and have received a number of donations. One of the other stipulations the select board made was that it did not use any town funds. So up to this point, everything's been paid for by donations from community members. And
Wow.
the plan is to pay for it without any town funding.
And then dedicate it over to the town, or?
And
would-
yes, it's on town property, and yes, it would definitely be owned by the town.
Kate?
Yeah, so I think perhaps that's a bit of an open question. I had talked to the Recreation Department, who maintains parklands. They don't have this currently budgeted. So one of the conditions of approval, I would say, needs to be that a mutually acceptable agreement needs to be come to as far as the maintenance of the bridge, and, along with a few other things. It has not been made clear to me. I didn't watch the select board meeting from 2014. It has been made clear to me that the town is going to take over the bridge.
Oh, No, I meant in terms of ownership, since it's on town property. But
No, yeah,
that
I
was-
know.
So that was one of the requirements when the permit was issued, that there be a committee established to maintain and make sure that inspections were done regularly for maintenance.
And who would
So-
be that committee?
There was a committee established 3 years ago that was brought to the select board, and Joe was involved in the formation of that committee. And it really has not been an active committee in the past 3 years, but I have spoken to several of the members who have agreed to continue oversight of the bridge.
And this is a committee of people appointed by the select board, or?
Well, it's a committee of people who have been interested in the bridge and have volunteered to serve on the committee. And then that list of people was submitted to, I can't remember now if it actually went for the select board or not. But it would be a Joe, I'm remembering, or looking at the notes from 2014, that Joe pointed out at that meeting that would be a committee serving the town.
Got it.
Can't remember the exact wording.
Does anyone have any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I guess I do, if I could. So if I understand correctly, your group will be funding the construction of the bridge, and then it may be, the town may take over ownership of the bridge, but in the event the town does not, there are a group of people who are committed to funding the maintenance and upkeep of the bridge.
Taking full responsibility for it. I mean, I guess the word ownership, we've never actually used that word. I'm assuming that because it's on town property, technically it would be owned by the town, but we've never actually defined what ownership means in this.
I'm not sure if
but-
the town doesn't accept it, if it becomes town property.
Well, yeah, so before we came to the DRB 3 years ago, the select board gave their approval of signing off on the permit application, and Joe also signed off on the application.
Thank you.
So I guess I would encourage all of you to read over the conditions that I suggested. I also just want to go through a few other things besides the maintenance aspect. So it's in the LaPlatte Nature Park, and there are a few defined trails there right now that are kept by the Parks and Recreation Department. There aren't any on the side where
The bridge goes
the
to?
bridge goes to. There is a pedestrian access easement in Acorn. The Acorn, or what is that called?
Sycamore Street,
Sa-
is that?
No, it's
Or
the
Aspen
Acorn
Circle.
Drive Development, Garden Side.
Oh, Garden Side, I'm sorry.
Yes, Garden
Oh,
Side.
I see, right, yeah.
So there is a pedestrian easement. I don't know if that's being utilized, but that would be the only real proper way to access it without going over private well, not the only way. One of the only ways to access it on that side without going over private property. The other one is in Rivercrest. There's town-owned land that abuts the road. There's no pedestrian access easement, but feasibly town land can be used to access it from there. But with that, there's a few things. One being, if there happened to be a medical emergency or something along those lines, maybe conditioning some signage or something along those lines to make sure, or a sign off from the police, fire, and rescue department that they would know how to access the trail on that side in the case that somebody collapsed or something along those lines and needed to get back there. And then the other thing is, there aren't any established trails. I know people walk back there all the time, but it is, for Shelburne, a relatively sensitive natural area. So obviously, having a footbridge cross there would encourage that. It's a lovely thing for pedestrians, but, having specific designated trails and not just allowing for a plethora to develop as a result of this is also something to consider. and you're part of the PASS committee, as
That's
I
right,
understand it,
yes.
so maybe you could speak
So,
to that a little
right, I
bit.
can, yes, because that was definitely one of the concerns of the original bridge, because several of the paths that did lead to the east side of the bridge crossed private property. And as you said, there's lots of trails in there, and the landowners are, for the most part, happy to have people use them, but they are not public trails. So the select board wanted to be sure that if we're building a bridge that's going to access the LaPlatte Nature Trails, that there be a town-owned property. So that's one of the things the Paths Committee has been working on. And there is a trail now completely on town property that goes from the intersection of Falls Road and Thompson Road down along the river to the bridge site. So that there's no need to go to, through Gardenside or the Webster property or any of those others. So right now, it's sort of an informal trail, but because it really can't go anywhere until there's a bridge. But once there's a bridge, I think the Paths Committee is in agreement that we'd like to establish that as part of the LaPlatte Nature Trail section.
Any questions from any other members of the board?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things they need to address here as far as the staff comments go. I really think, for example, they do need to get input from the other departments in town, fire, rescue, mostly.
We consulted with Natural Resources, and I have been in ongoing communication with Betsy in the Recreation Department
Yep.
about this.
And that's fine, but I think we need to get something from them that tells us where they're at with it, because it sounds like it was a surprise to Betsy when you mentioned the maintenance part of it, or?
I mean, Betsy definitely knows the history of the project. But like I said, budgeting for this year, it wasn't integrated into that. So, this was approved in 2014. Approval expired, and then there were some changes. So I do think it would be appropriate to go back and get some feedback from Parks and Recreation to see what their take on it would be at this point. Along with fire and rescue, and and maybe a meeting with Joe to get a little more concrete answer on this committee and a maintenance agreement. I think it's a great project, but I think to go past those would.
The other things I'd like to throw out there is, one is I think it's very important that these plans are stamped by a professional engineer, so their errors and omissions insurance is in play. I don't know if this guy's got a stamp that did this work for you.
He
but-
definitely does. It's also been reviewed by Katie Hill, who's another engineer that
that's-
worked on it, and Steve Vaughn.
So when the zoning permit application comes in, I'd put that, make sure that's a condition of that. And the other thing is, I think it's part and parcel with maintenance, but I think it would need to be inspected every year.
That's in the plan, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Inspected by an engineer.
Right, and the other thing is just since you're working in the river corridor, to be really careful about, erosion control measures and so forth while you're building it.
Yes, and,
'cause you're in a
and we met with
pretty
four different,
sensitive area.
people from 4 different departments at the Agency of Natural Resources originally, and then more recently, we had Tina Heath, a wetlands, I'm not sure her title exactly, did a site visit and did some sampling, and especially with the new wetlands regulations, there was some question at first, but then she signed off on it.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on this application? Sure,
yeah.
a couple, yeah. I have to have you.
My name's Christopher White. I live at 470, is that where we live, 470? Yeah, I think so. Just kidding. 470 Acorn Lane. I'm here with my daughter Greta. 470 Acorn Lane, Shelburne.
You swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Action.
I just want to check in. I'm here with my daughter Greta White, who's a 6th grader at Shelburne Community School. And we live in the garden side community of condos, and we're quite familiar with the project. I guess the way I've explained this project to people that I've spoken to about it is imagine the children of 3 different neighborhoods coming and meeting at Pooh Corner. If you're for those Winnie the Pooh fans out here, and it's just amazing. Greta's now a 6th grader, but when we started, I think she was probably in kindergarten. When there was no bridge, we were able to kind of, do something like, Robin Hood over a log, and we didn't meet anyone coming the other way with the lance or whatever. But anyway, it's just a phenomenal project. And we're really grateful for Joplin, spearheading it, because I don't think anyone else has the energy in this, combination of what it takes to do this. I don't think I've ever told anyone about raising funds for the Shelburne Youth Lacrosse Scholarship, because I don't think you should talk about stuff. You just do good, you don't have to talk about it. But tonight I think it's probably apropos. I served on the Shelburne Lacrosse Committee for 2 years, and discovered while I was there that we didn't really have any scholarship funds for kids that might want to sign up that don't have the money for equipment or registration or the U.S. lacrosse membership. And lacrosse, particularly for boys, can get expensive. So with respect to the idea of getting people in the community who support this project, parents primarily, obviously, to raise funds, I've done it. I raised $1,000 in really small donations, $10, $15, from all kinds of little teeny mom and pops. Didn't go to the usual suspects, who typically are, gratefully, they give us money for other things, fireworks. But I specifically didn't go to them and said, this is just for lacrosse. And $1,000 a month. And it was just being nice, asking, letting them know what it was for. So we can raise, I've been asked to be on this committee. We didn't want to put the cart before the horse with respect to having a committee that we don't really have we have a project, but we don't have something to raise the funds for yet. But I can tell you, there are other parents out there that totally support this, that not only will be out there enjoying being out in nature with the children, but we'll raise the money. We'll do whatever it takes, whatever you ask. With this guy right here, we're happy to volunteer, because we're so grateful for everything he's done. I mentioned the nature effect. The concern that you have about having more people out there in the trails, and then it's a critical habitat for certain species. That's the fact that the kids are getting out there and being educated about this. That knowing that there's bobcat habitat out there, all different types of habitat, and all different types of animals that they wouldn't otherwise know about if they didn't get out there. They know about it. So there's an educational component. There's a getting outside and exercising component. I don't know what the percentage of childhood obesity is in the state of Vermont, but I know for a fact that the U.S. is not the envy of the civilized world when it comes to getting kids outside and getting them out there. So I've said enough. I just want to applaud Joplin, thank Joplin, and thank you for allowing this to happen. I know Betsy. I've done a lot. I've been a youth lacrosse coach for years. And I want to thank Betsy as well. She's not here tonight. But this project is awesome. And thanks very much. We'll do what it takes. You give us the green light, we'll do what it takes. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, come forward, please, sir. Your name, please?
My name's Per Eisenman.
Can you,
My name is Per Eisenman. I swear to say things that are true. I don't remember exactly what else. I just moved to Shelburne. I've lived in Charlotte for 10 years. And I can't say anything better than Chris said, but I second everything he said. I'm confident that the neighborhood, that the parents, that the community will be happy to raise the money. I also have a lot of fundraising experience myself. And I'm just so excited to have my kids be able to walk to school and to be able to walk down to town myself. I've already done it a couple times, even though I've only lived here for 3 weeks. So. Thank you. And I appreciate the work that everybody's doing.
thanks for coming tonight. Anybody else? There's 2 more hands raised. Ma'am, come on forward.
I am Allison Curtis, and I swear I'll tell the truth.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's gonna really,
All right, I'm
Tricky.
also new in Shelburne, sort of, part-time. I lived most of my life in Switzerland, and Switzerland's known for chocolate and cheese, but also walking. And I just will walk through the river if the bridge isn't there, and that's more dangerous for 911 than a bridge. Because of the other bridge, which everyone's supposed to go 25 miles an hour, but if you stood there, you would see they don't. Over, I don't know, it's falls over the same river. Can't get up the hill. I'll be 80 in a week, and it's a bit steep. So I had to spend all my savings on getting a pedal assist bike. It's bright green. I have a bright green helmet, a bright green everything. I still hate going over that bridge, and I want to walk. I want to walk, and I want to speak for a lot of people at Rivercrest. We are not old and 1 foot in the grave. We are ready to get out there. Many people have dogs. They're all on leashes. They all pick up after their dog, and they would just love to be able to walk to the post office to mail a letter. It's incredible. The people I've talked to, what? You can get to the post office from here without going on a road? And I said, well, right now you need to wade. I don't know what will happen. But, so you speak for the young, and I have 3 grandchildren who live up in the same area, and they've always walked to school with Joplin. And my other question is, and I don't know, normally in Switzerland when you have a river, it's both sides of the river that are owned by the town or the country or the county. What's happened to our side of the LaPlatte River? If the one side is a nature reserve, what the other side just stops where the sand is? I mean,
No, both sides are.
okay,
owned
so
by
it
the
is
town.
town land.
Yeah. Mhm.
So there could be paths. I mean, I've also seen, I've walked at the Zen Center, and if you go down there, there's some paths down to the river, LaPlatte River from there that are really iffy, and I don't know how any, what do you call them, emergency vehicles could get to somebody who went down there to look at the river. I mean, I think the access to our side, I call our side the Rivercrest side, is easier from our Rivercrest and Sycamore Street development than it even is further up where you can get to the river from where the Zen Center is too. And people are going to make paths wherever they want. They hear the water. They want the kids to get down there. And, anyway, I hope that I will be able to walk across the bridge quite soon, which I'll help paint or something. I'm not really an engineer. Okay, that's all.
thank you. I think there was one more hand up. Yes, sir?
I'm Steve Antonozzi. I promise to tell the truth.
Okay, thank
I'm
you,
on the
Steve.
PATH committee. I've been there for quite a few
Right.
years. I just a little general background. When the previous sort of test bridge went up, there's definitely a really strong, very positive response throughout the community. The whole LaPlatte area has been very, very heavily used for many years. The trails there kind of go back to classical times. I've been probably since 2003, been working in the original versions of those trails were there already. In 2011, there was a major renewal of those trails in which every bridge in there was replaced, and that was all by volunteers or volunteers raising grants. And so we have a really good track record of that. When the Shelburne Heights connector was put in last fall, that was all volunteer labor. So thank you for your
Thanks, Stephen.
consideration.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? Any other questions? In that case, I think I'm going to take a stab at a motion with the conditions that we've discussed. And I'll take any amendments as are necessary to the motion. I'll move to close the hearing with an indication of approval for CU 14-13R1 and direct staff to prepare a decision to indicate approval for the construction of the suspension footbridge in the LaPlatte Nature Park as depicted on the application materials with the following conditions: that a zoning permit be obtained prior to improvements being made, that any application for a zoning permit contain a Vermont Agency of Natural Resources project review sheet for the proposal, that the sheet identify all state and federal agencies from which permit approval is required for the proposal and shall be filed as required, and attached to the municipal permit application. The identified permits or letters indicating that no permit are required shall be submitted to the administrative officer and attached to the permit before work begins. Also, a condition would be that any application for a zoning permit contain plans certified by a registered professional engineer with an engineer's stamp at the expense of the applicant, and that before anything goes forward, a maintenance, or as a condition of this approval, a maintenance agreement be obtained and be acceptable to the town manager prior to any zoning application being filed. And as part of that maintenance agreement, the board would request an annual inspection requirement. Also, a zoning permit is required to permit commencing any construction. I think I may have already said that. The project shall be inspected by an engineer selected by the town prior to any public use, so that there's a check and balance there. No water course shall be altered or relocated as a result of the development, and that the applicant obtain letters of, from the following governmental agencies for the town of Shelburne: Rescue, Fire, Police, Parks and Rec, and that that applicant submit plans for erosion control prior to any receipt of a permit. Does anyone have anything else to add, or did I cover all the concerns? Okay. I'll take a second to the motion then.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay, none. Motion carries. Approval is granted. I think you'll get a written approval of this, and good luck to you. It's an admirable project. I'm so glad I didn't have to do any of that math. It was unbelievable. Maybe Greta can show us a thing or two. Thank you very much. Good night. So long, farewell.
See you, Jeff.
We'll just take a minute and let the room clean out before we get to the last item on our agenda. Did you see those? You see that math? Did you probably didn't get a chance, Norm, to see the engineer, the perch engineer.
Yeah, it's crazy. It looked like,
I was tempted to call Greta up and ask her to do one of those problems.
Spit out of the program.
Yeah, probably. Looked very impressive. But
But you gotta know how to do it.
yeah, it looked like plans for a bridge over the Hudson River or something. It was like pretty
okay, here we go. All right, we're down to the final four, so to speak. Mr. Hodgson having recused himself, I will move on to application CU 17-11. It's a conditional use application by Civil Engineering Associates on behalf of Joseph and Colleen Brandon for the construction of a lakeshore erosion control structure. The property is located at 500 Land's End. And, wait a minute, 500 Land's End land? Isn't it Land's End? Lane, thank you. It's located in the Rural District, the Lakeshore Overlay District, and the Floodplain and Watercourse Overlay Districts. Is there anyone here to testify about this application? Sir, if you would come forward, give us your name and allow me to swear you in.
My name is Jack Milbank, Civil Engineering Associates.
And raise your right hand, please. Mr. Milbank, do you swear or affirm that the evidence you give in connection with this application will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury, sir?
I do.
Okay. Why don't you tell us about what's going on? Land's End is at the northernmost tip of Shelburne Point?
That's correct. It is the northwest tip of the point. And Shelburne Point is a point of land that's got some shaly base, and it's got clay soil on top of it. It's really susceptible to erosion from high water and wave conditions. It's exposed to the northwest, the west, and the south, which are the predominant winds we have. And what's happened at the Brandon property, similar to other properties out there that have been stabilized, is that the toe of the slope has been scoured, and that scouring takes away valuable material, so that when it rains or the slope above it is saturated, there's no support. The soils are poor, and the soils either slide or they rotate. And what happens is you lose all the vegetation that's on the slope. And so the proposal is to stabilize the toe and to restore some material so that vegetative cover can be reestablished. And we prevent the slides. 2011 was the most difficult year. The lake had its historic high water mark of 103.25 elevation-wise, and we also had some incredible rainfall events at the same time. And that was sort of the beginning of the failure for this property. This has been deferred a little bit, but the rainfall that we've had this summer, the vegetation hasn't reestablished itself, and we're still getting erosion. Although the toe, most of the material that slid to the lake is gone. So it's, anyway, so the proposal is to build approximately 100 linear feet of large boulder wall, a natural material, naturally impervious on top of impervious surface, and then to put geotextile behind it. And
Geotech?
a fabric, a structural fabric that actually gets placed on top of some of the eroded soil. Smaller rock gets put behind the large boulders, and we build that up to a height where we can then put topsoil seed mulch. We can get vegetation. It's non-structural fill. And that's the proposal.
Hey, thank you.
There is something I would like to add to this, and this is a difficult project only because it's difficult in a permitting standpoint because we're also dealing with the state of Vermont. So the state of Vermont is very supportive of terracing. They like terracing. It's one of the best management practices for steep slopes. But we've found that at the local level, it hasn't been that well received. But we were hoping that, and we have not put this in front of you, but there was an idea of perhaps exploring a terraced wall here with a 1 or 2 terrace. Because in the terracing, we can put vegetation. It also can help eliminate the amount of material we have to bring in to get a slope back to vegetation, back to grade. So there's less trucking. So I have an option here. It's not,
So there's less trucking, what do you mean by that?
less trucking, less material that we have to bring down the road. And we have done this one project on Shelburne Point. It's been very successful. It's south of this project. We
Just
also
south?
did it for the town of Shelburne in cooperation with the repair of Harbor Road. We have a terraced wall there. There's a slide on the Shelburne Bay side of Harbor Road that we designed and permitted.
Yeah, that's where,
The John and Amy Sars.
SARS, yeah.
Yes, yes. So they have both they have a terraced wall on the Broad Lake, and they have a terraced wall, or the town in cooperation with. But the visual impact of it, you would think it might break up the tall wall. The truth of the matter is, when you're from the lake looking at it, unless there's some type of vegetation or there's something in between, it's the depth perception. It still looks like a single wall.
Isn't that what we got also with the Day property that used to be the Snelling property? Did you guys do that?
Peggy Days is a single wall, there's no terracing on that at all.
Okay.
That is one tall wall. And the height of that wall was dictated by getting a height that we could maintain a 2-on-1, a slope that could be revegetated, a minimal amount of slope, 2 feet horizontally for 1 foot vertically. That's kind of the tightest slope you want to work with in terms of trying to revegetate. The things that we've done at Shelburne Farms, we can go tighter, 1.5 on 1, but we use, or the technique is to design it with shot rock, and it's very hard to get. It's really difficult to.
But this plan isn't for a terraced wall.
This plan is not. This plan, I was on to discuss it with you. I wanted to see how you guys feel about terracing. It's important because I think it makes great sense. It is one of the best, no mow zones. There's very little best management practices for slopes that exceed 20% in the state of Vermont Shoreline Protection Act. And what's hard about the permitting is it's hard to decide. I mean, we have to certainly meet the local, we're in town, we have a development review board, we got land development regulations that were based on hard work, and, you know, someone's thought how this town should work, but we're working with a state that has a different idea of, you know, the biotechnical solution for Lake Champlain, the state doesn't really know how to deal with. They can deal with it on ponds, small bodies of water. They can deal with it with water levels that only vary a couple feet. This lake right here is as challenging or more challenging than the Great Lakes because of the 10-foot difference the lake can have in a course of a year. So they recognize, and even on small ponds, that a combination of stone, hard boulder, wall, you need that at the toe of a slope to anchor. But the question is, you know, vegetating from the top of the wall or forward. So I just, you know, in this situation, it'd be great if we would have liked to put a terrace plan together. I had an option design for it. I had pricing done on it.
I think it's a good idea, Jack. I'm in favor of terrace walls because I think they're easy to vegetate, and from horizontally on the lake, they have pretty much the same appearance, but you also have some vegetation in there, and I think it's a great technique.
The views that improve, but anyway, I had an option here that I think we might have to bring back another plan. We could.
We had more of a slide, and when we looked at it and said, what's going to be least that you would see pleasing from the lake. I don't want to have anybody see like those big granite things and think, oh.
You know, we need to get your name, and also you need to be by the microphone, sorry. You must be,
It's important.
yeah. Your name, please?
Colleen Brandon.
Okay, Colleen.
I swear to tell the truth.
Okay, great.
We've had a lot more, with the wet this year, we had a lot more fall from it, so it's hugely sloped and it's dragged everything down. And we were just looking at it the other day again, and it makes more sense visually, I think, from out on the lake to look at it and have it be terraced, because then you can fill in the stuff that fell with the terracing, and you can't do that. It would hold it better, I think, is what the consensus was. It would hold. You know, I look at it and say, oh, you know, I'll keep everything as natural as like we can out there. You know, that's our goal. You shouldn't be able to see us. We don't want to see you. You know, we want to see the bobcats. They're cool. Yeah, so
Okay,
anyways,
all right.
that's the deal.
Thank you. Kate, anything to add? I'm wondering, I'm just wondering if, is the terracing not permitted? Mr. Milbank made it sound like it's not.
Well, I'm wondering why is that noise?
I'm only going to say that part of the whole divide, part of this history of the stabilizations, they used to be fill and erosion permits and done administratively. So it came to a point in time where some people started to take advantage of some of these slides or failures, and this is the history. And what happened was that they were permitting they basically, the land would slide, they would the contours change.
Build a wall.
The jurisdictional contour changes. At the 98 for the core is all of a sudden, now you've got a slide. And when I mean a slide, you've got a bank that slides to the ground, and the trees and everything are still in place, and the material's still on top of it intact, but it's just slid down a bank. So what they've done is they started to do is get a fill and erosion control permit and stabilize the slide that slid into the lake. And so there's this concept of land grabbing, or that crept into dialogue. And so that wouldn't happen again, or wouldn't be taken advantage of, there was the erosion control measures that involved seawalls or revetments or whatever you want to call them, you know, like erosion control structures, became a part of the public forum and wasn't done administratively. So some of the earlier walls, there was a discussion about no concrete, nothing white, you know, the materials, what's good, it needs to blend into the shore. Terracing actually meant to some people that you were gonna build this vertical wall, and, you know, you were really, truthfully, the fill that was coming in was no different than concept in the land grabbing concept. So it was discouraged. It was easy to get approved, a single wall. And we haven't really come back with many terraces. We don't do a lot of these. These are a major investment by a landowner who's really interested in being, well, most often they're stewards. There are always gonna be people that are looking for an edge, and they use it as a landscape feature as well as a stabilization, which it can be if it's done right and done, you know, aesthetically pleasing, landscaped, revegetated, scale, broken up, it works. But the idea is to make sure that you don't lose any more. In this particular piece of property, if you notice the property line on here, there's very short distance from the top of the eroded bank to the property, and that's kind of a walking path out to that's a really neat point. So anyway,
I
we
think-
really want to protect that, so.
I think we could condition this, given that, if we base our approval on that the outermost edge of this wall doesn't exceed what's depicted on the plans, and if it makes sense to terrace it back from there as a best management practice to stabilize this bank, which is a precious resource, I would be in favor of an approval with that condition, because it looks like it needs some help pretty quickly.
My question is, I know that, is it Helverson that's right contiguous?
Yes.
I know they have a very long and low set of boulders that cropped up, it wasn't, I guess, on the board, or it didn't come before us, but it sort of cropped up in the last couple of years?
That was put in front of the board.
Yeah, it must not
There
have
was
been.
two. There's actually two different pieces of it, and that came in front of the Development Review Board.
Yeah,
And that was, the largest piece you're probably thinking about is in front of common land. It's on his lot, but it's part of the common land
okay, that
for-
makes sense then.
But that actually served, that's a very interesting dynamic, but that used to be called the nude beach back in the day, but some of us lived down there long enough. Anyway, that stabilization is similar and is what we're
To
proposing.
what you're proposing.
But that's a one monolithic
Yeah, yep.
wall. We think it makes better sense to break that up and step it.
So what
But-
I don't understand is if your proposal to break it up is inconsistent with what you've given to us.
It is, it's something we
Okay.
thought about after looking at it very carefully, after submitting
And
this to Kate,
It's what
after.
Mr. Salmon is suggesting we add to any approval. Am I following all that? Yeah.
This is an example of what it might look like, this
Okay,
isn't,
that'd
but
be
this
great.
isn't really, I can show you what it kind of could look like, but
be helpful.
what I don't want to do is, I know that Kate, I didn't get this stuff in a week before the meeting, And I had some old photographs too that I didn't get in the week before, but anyway, stepped wall in section makes the walls shorter. You're still
it.
getting to the same height, but you're saving material that needs to fill in this slope, and it allows, the other thing we looked at, quite honestly, is that we probably don't need to step this the whole way, based on the ledge and the slope and the height, and based on the cost of setting the base stones and keying into ledge. There's sometimes when we measure these things, it's not ideal situation. We go out and we do all our measurements, but there's snow or there's ice or there's conditions that don't reveal everything that allows us to make good decisions. And ledge is a tricky when it's covered.
Could you, Mr. Milbank, point to me where on your map I would see the Halverson common area, just for orienting purposes, common area wall? So,
this
yeah,
circle area,
Yep.
the project is here.
correct. Yep.
Is the common area wall, this is his other wall.
Okay, got it.
He's
Okay,
got
yep,
two
I've seen that,
pieces.
yep.
He's got two permanent pieces, and then he's also permitted
Okay.
some infill with.
So will there be a level of consistency, or I'm only just aesthetically curious about how the two walls will appear, or if you could even really see them both at the same time, probably not.
We'll have a very hard time unless there'll be some plantings, there's some in between, and that will break up breaks up the depth. Otherwise, when you look at large rectangular pattern, and you're far enough away from it, you don't have any depth perception. You really see it from the top, you see it from the side, you might see it going north and
I like
south
the
a little bit.
terrace.
I'm in favor, I think it's more effective, it's easier to build, and less
Mary, can I ask
less
a question?
Oh, yeah.
Let me show you, I'm the neophyte on this board, so let me show my lack of knowledge. What takes us beyond the jurisdiction of the U.S. Corps of Engineers?
The elevation, the Army Corps of Engineers has studied Lake Champlain Basin, and they've come up with some very key, two key numbers. And the numbers, they studied the basin, and they looked all the way from Rouse's Point to Whitehall. They studied it and found that there's a natural shelf at high water, and it's just defined by an elevation. And the elevation of the Corps' jurisdiction is elevation at 98 above sea level. And it's based on a datum, a specific datum, which is called the National Geodetic Vertical Datum of 1929. And it's a little different than when you read the lake elevation or you work with elevation. FEMA uses, you got to be careful, it's not huge, but there's about a half a foot difference between our contemporary datum that we're using on land and using LiDAR and using all these fancy contours. The lake works with the old datum, and it's 29. Their other key definition was ordinary low water, which was elevation 93. But they take jurisdiction at 98. So because they've decided to use 98 and 93, there's a number in between that sort of, it's 95.5. And that's what the state of Vermont uses as mean water for Lake Champlain. And that's their jurisdictional, the Corps takes jurisdiction all the way down, state kicks in at 95.5. Town of Shelburne, every community up and down the lake have different, for erosion control, you're at 98. For setbacks and structures, you're at 102. They're all, the jurisdictional limits are elevation based.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
Does a terracing kind of help with the whole idea of a biotechnical erosion control measure, as far as you're concerned?
I mean, I haven't really looked at the plans, but it sounds like it's gonna integrate it more. So is it between the 98 and the 102 still, or is it expanding outside of that?
No, it doesn't. It is, it's still, it's basically the toe of this wall is, some of it was at 100. This piece down here was at 98. So the toe of the wall actually varies in height, but none of it's below 98. 102 for erosion control, 102 is important because it's our people still use it as the high water, it's not the high water mark anymore. FEMA, flood mapping, flooding on the lake, they still use 102. The 103.25 was a 500-year event, and you're gonna have that, there's always gonna be statistically things
Was that 11?
Yes, yes. But, no, it does not, it doesn't affect, it doesn't change that. Just so you know about, I know, this is interesting too in terms of the shoreline, this whole Shelburne Point subdivision has some vegetative cutting. There's different things, they have internal, as part of the approval for cutting at the Jackson subdivision, there's a whole set of, I'll call them covenants, I guess, but there's things that have to be submitted in
We're
terms of.
familiar.
Yeah, I know you're well aware, and so, separately, we have an application, an administrative application, and so that we can define, all these properties were supposed to have a plan in place before a building permit was issued for a house. And for some reason, we had a series of coordinators and transitions. Some were here for a while, some were short stayed. And for some reason, that was an oversight, which we worked really hard on seeing if we could figure out what happened. But we have application right now for that. So we also have, as part of this, what you're not seeing is the application to get rid of the dead, diseased, and damaged trees. But we will be replacing and landscaping as part of this project. And as part of that vegetative cutting permit, there will be a condition of this, I'm sure will be a condition of this approval.
I get the impression, both from having been out there and also from what Ms. Brandon just said, that there's no intention to clear cut for a point view of a home.
No. I have Michael Stickney as our permit analyst for the Shoreland Protection Act from the Agency of Natural Resources. I've had her out in front of this to review the cutting and to review the stabilization. And that's why I bring up it's part of we had submitted this, and I really know that they'll support the terracing, so.
Great. Pardon me. Ooh, it must be after 8, sorry. Does anyone have a motion to make?
So did you stay up for all 19 innings last night? Are you telling me?
Second longest game in the
No.
history of Fenway Park?
No.
Well, I would make a motion to finalize the record for this application, CU 17-11.
And I'll second the motion
Okay?
to finalize the record. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Got another motion in
So
there?
I then would move to direct staff to prepare a decision to indicate approval of the conditional use application, CU 13-18R1, for this erosion control structure at 422 Lands End Lane. What's that?
No, yeah, 500, sorry, I messed that up.
It's not 40, it's not 422?
No, it's 500. And
Five.
also, that sheet won't be right. Are you making that sheet part of the record?
No, I don't think we should, because it's,
Right, we're just going to make, I
but I'm
think,
gonna add some language.
Okay.
Okay?
so it's 500 Lands End Lane?
500 Lands End Lane, Lot 4 of
Sorry,
Shelburne
I
Point.
kept doing that. Jeez.
So, with the following conditions. A zoning permit shall be required. Zoning permit application for site work shall include the submission of a Vermont agency ANR project review sheet. 3, any removal of vegetation shall require a lakeshore vegetation cutting application and permit. 90 days after project completion, a professional engineer shall certify the project has been in construction according to approved plans as condition. And the 5th thing I'm going to say is that, bear with me here. The structure shall be built using best management practices and such that the toe of the wall does not exceed what's indicated on sheet C 1.1. And same thing, and then an as-built drawing is submitted after the wall is completed. Okay? Does that work for you? Does
Can
that
I
work for
amend
you?
your motion? to-
Absolutely.
I might have misunderstood to add that the wall may be terraced
Yep.
in the manner suggested by the applicant.
It's fine, yeah, but I
Is
was
that what
just
you
say
said?
best management practices, those
got
are
it.
the
Oh, is that
state
what they-
the state BMPs, or, that's
Okay.
fine.
All right, great.
You know where we're going with that, right, Kate?
you don't want the terrace suggested?
No, you can put that in there, and terracing's okay.
Do you want to just add a general condition of approval that it has to be in conformance with the requirements of the lakeshore overlay? Just generally throw it out there, no concrete, has to be natural, tri-bio, okay.
That's fine.
All of that.
We know they're not gonna do that anyways, but that's fine.
The wall that you don't notice, that, just now that we're, the next property on the point to the east is owned by these folks that have a panstone wall. And because it's shadowed and because the hemlocks hang over the bank there, it's very, it doesn't really stand out. And that's a stone color of probably choice for this project.
So to the east, you mean to the east of Halverson? It's in the bay. Okay. I'll second Mark's motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
We love it. We love it here.
When you talked about the new beach, you looked at me like you remembered me from those days.
We're still on the record, Norm.
We used to get caught, the original owners, they would just pasture heifers out there in the summer, so that made awful good ammo for all those people at the bottom of the beach bathing.
Any other business this evening? I think I do have a little piece of other business. Thank you very much for coming, and
Thank you.
good work for being out there. We wanted to stay Shelburne Point, and not Shelburne Cliff. No, he left. He was excused. Other business, I couldn't tell for sure, but I think that is resigning. Yeah, Judy Christensen, I think, is resigning. Is that right? Did you read it that way?
That's
I
what I was
have.
gathering, yeah.
So we will have an opening.
Yep, I informed Joe this
Okay.
afternoon, so I'll put the word out there. I have some people who have expressed some interest, so.
Okay.
Norm?
We'll see how people respond to my dissent. See if they really want me on.
Anything else? I have to sign these things. There's, I think there's, I love the way, look at this, Norm's
signed it.
name is in parens.
You still have to sign the decision, don't you?
I think I saw,
Did you do
I
that?
You
signed
have to
the
sign it, you have to sign the, show
As-
you're dissenting.
as
Did you
well.
sign that?
Ah, guys, don't talk about it in front of me. I don't know about it yet.
Oh, that was one I was going for. Is that the Halverson? The Halverson one. Oh, I watched that one. Yeah,
Did you?
I did
I
watch that
didn't,
one.
I didn't disgrace myself too much.
You
running
did a fabulous
the
job.
show.
I think you did a great job.
Yeah, she's in the running for next chair.
Yeah, so, all good?
I think we're all good. Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
I don't think. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.